I think every single artist has at some point felt creative burnout. You know, you love creating the art, you have a passion for it, but then at some point you hit a stage where singing into the microphone becomes hard, or playing the chords doesn't feel fun anymore. You just feel burnt out. And I kind of made it my mission to kind of figure out a way to cure this, because I obviously felt it too, much like you probably did, where, you know, I was sitting down there every single day, making songs, having fun, having the time of my life, making, creating art. I was posting it, I was getting followers, I was whatever. You know, I had this big burst and this big energy towards my craft. But then I kind of hit a point where, you know, suddenly I didn't feel the pull towards doing it anymore. Suddenly it was hard. I had to force myself to do it, and you start seeing less results, and you don't want to do it anymore. And it hits the stage where you're even forgetting why you're doing it in the first place. And so you have to firstly like realize that this isn't like a problem. This isn't a permanent thing. You know, creative burnout, it's something that comes and goes, and it's gonna happen to anyone. You know, the kind of passion for the art is gonna come and go in waves, and like understanding that creative burnout isn't like some permanent state. It's just only something that's passing through. You know, it's a moment where you're just not pulled to the craft, which is totally fine. Okay, understand that it's not a bad thing. It's totally natural, really, isn't it? You know, sometimes you have an interest in doing that. You just go through seasons of life, and naturally we change and we go back and forth. So firstly, understand that it's not a bad thing. It's not something permanent. It's not your fault even, you know. But as I said, you know, I kind of made my mission to try and figure out what the cause of this was. And so the first thing I noticed myself doing was I tried to write down like everything that was going on at the times where I felt some type of creative burnout. And what was the focus of my music? What was the focus of my craft? What was I thinking about? You know, what was the purpose of me doing it? And what I noticed more often than not was that anytime I felt like a creative burnout, yeah, I felt it in a phase where I was going through kind of a stage where I was thinking about like numbers and, you know, how to optimize for streams. I felt the most like burnt out, and burnout coming most when I started to make songs not for what I wanted to make, and not making songs for myself, but instead maybe looking at the charts and looking at TikTok and looking at what was blowing up and trying to like emulate and copy that. And I noticed that at those times when I was like actually like trying to force some type of streams and, you know, building a fan base just by copying what's like trending or whatever, trying to manufacture a trending sound or whatever, that's when I noticed, you know, some type of burnout most. It was at the times where I was putting the pressure on myself to kind of succeed, you know, where I was actually actively trying to not just make music for the fun of it, but instead kind of do it to get money or doing it to get streams or whatever. And so when the focus shifted from just me being fun, having fun and, you know, expressing myself, and when it shifted to just trying to actually like make something like physical, monetary from my craft, that's when I noticed like the feeling of burnout. It wasn't fun anymore. It was getting harder to even do shit. And so sorry for interrupting, but if you need help building a music brand that attracts a fan base, we can literally do that for you in the first link in the description if you're interested. And if not, just keep watching the video. That used to feel, you know, effortless. And so that's the first one. And like, why does that happen? And like, why do we feel burnt out when we try and like do the art for like a set goal instead of just having fun or expressing ourselves? Well, I thought about this, and it's all about kind of the nature of like goal setting and the nature of expectation. Okay, the word is kind of the important word is expectation. Okay, because if you sit down and make music, and you want to succeed with your session, if the goal and the expectation for your session is to sit down and have fun, then just sitting down and making music is probably going to be fun, and so you've succeeded. But now, if the goal of making music is to make money, you're sitting down and you're making a song, and then you're gonna market the song, and then you want to make money, then the problem is that like you can't control whether people will like your song or not. Okay, so you're basically setting a goal which you have like not full control over. Okay, so basically if you set your goal on things such as, you know, getting streams or getting recognized for your art or getting people to follow you, what's gonna happen is you're putting your kind of idea of success towards things that you can't really control. But if you instead just like set your goal to, you know, just being consistent and showing up and doing something, whatever, however small it is, then you're easily gonna succeed, because you can like fully control your input. You know, you can fully control what you do. but you can't control whether, you know, people are gonna like your song. You can't control if people are gonna follow you on Instagram or whatever. And so the reality of it is that if you set your goal to being like, oh, I want to get 100,000 streams on this song, like that's a hard goal to reach at the end of the day. And I'm not saying it's impossible, because it's definitely not. I might be living proof of that. But the problem is that when you're setting a goal, there's no guarantee for you. You can't guarantee that you'll hit your goal, and you can't guarantee anything in life. But it's more likely for you to just succeed if the idea of success is just to make a nice song, compared to if your goal is to get 100,000 streams. Okay, because what happens when you set like a goal that you won't like succeed with, basically what happens is you're gonna be discouraged from doing the thing, because you've not reached the goal. Like, the amount of input doesn't equal the output that you want, and so your brain kind of thinks, you know, this isn't something that's gonna get me what I want, and so you're gonna be more discouraged towards doing the thing. You know, that's the kind of psychology behind it. And like the final thing that I would really want to touch down on is like the way like being a musician and making music, the way it connects to your identity, because that's a big one when it comes to burnout. Because like, if you're not going through this phase of burnout because you've set maybe an expectation and you've not met that expectation, and now you feel discouraged for making music, or you become fucking shit at it, you know, basically, if your identity is just being an artist and you're now a bad artist, you're gonna be even more discouraged from making music, and it's gonna translate to other areas of your life because of the way that, you know, identity works. And so I think a good way to kind of like not hinder burnout but kind of bounce back from it quickly is to kind of have different things in your life and have different things tied to your identity. Like, if your kind of value of yourself is just, oh, I'm a good artist, what happens when you're not a good artist? You know, I think that's the problem with that, like, most artists face. I don't think the problem for most artists is that they get burned out, because like at the end of the day, as I said before, it's like a natural thing. Like, you will get more and less interested in doing whatever thing as time goes, you know, depending on the mood, depending on the day, depending on, you know, what weather's outside. You don't know what's gonna happen. You're gonna come back and forth. But like, on those days where you're not interested in making music, or on the day where it's not working out, you need to like understand that, like, if being an artist, being a musician is the only thing that's tied to your identity, when you can't be an artist, you're gonna feel shit about yourself. So you need to add other things in your life, okay? Don't be someone who just sits in your room and makes music all day, okay? Go outside, touch grass, maybe be like a runner, go outside and run 10K runs. And so when you can't make music and feel like a failure because you've not been able to make music, go outside and go on a 10K run. And now you're not a musician, you're a runner, you're an athlete, and you've succeeded in that area. And so your identity will still feel, you know, successful, you know? So I think the big one is kind of like, in the same way that like a wealthy man would like diversify his assets, you know, you need to be a diverse person, is what I'm trying to say. Like, don't put all your value, all your personal value into how good of an artist you are. Because I watched the damn Avicii documentary, and I'm not gonna say too much, but I think that like it can be really bad for your mental health if you kind of like, you know. I mean, you need to have other things in your life. You need to really, man, take care of yourself, bro. No, as I said, don't tie too much of your personal value and your identity to being an artist. Diversify yourself, you know. Diversify your assets, because there's gonna come days where you're not gonna want to make this shit. There's gonna come days when you're gonna quit. There's gonna come days where you'll feel like shit. You won't get the rewards, but like, kind of like diversifying your character, now your identity, you know, having other things that give you value, having other things that, you know, make you fulfilled is just like, it's necessary in life. Because if you put too much kind of value and identity into this shit, you're gonna feel shit when it doesn't work out, basically, is what I'm trying to say. But hey, have a good day though, have a good life, you know. First link in the description if you want. If you don't want, I don't give a fuck. Peace.